What makes your coalition strong? How do you win? And then based on that, what do y'all want to be doing? What both in the short term, before the end of the year, what do y'all want to have make happen? And then what do you want to have happen next year? And how can we at the ORDC help you do that? I've observed, I've heard, again, when you talked about Caleb David back then, talked about turning 50. When I turned 50, since I've been 50, I have no qualms about telling you what the right answer is. When I was younger, because I valued democracy, real democracy, where the people rule, I really wanted to create conditions where we all kind of throw in and say, okay, what do we think the solution is for this? And what do we think will work in this situation? But in that same timeline, I also made it my business to study, observe, and learn what is the best practice. What is the best way to get along with people who are really different than you? What is the best way to share power with people who've never had power before? What is the best way to help someone find their voice who doesn't ever speak out? So I know those now. And so now I have no problem about saying, this is what you're supposed to do? Okay. Now, what I say might not fit for you, so listen with your heart, your gut, the base of your spine. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit for you. And, I'm happy to hear challenges and questions, and we can talk about those. But one of the things that I describe as pitfalls, the places that we get stuck in that can either derail our energy towards our challenge and journey to justice, or can just suck our energy away so that we don't have any energy to do the work of justice. If I encourage y'all to do anything, it's to figure out what are the actions you can do together. Public and political education, can't get enough of it. Political education is not the same as analysis. That is one of the pitfalls. I have sat with wonderful people, brilliant people, who don't do anything beyond talking to me about analysis. Guess what? I don't need any more analysis. I knew when I was in my teens that this stuff right here, this is messed up. I don't want any of this to last any longer. And that was 35 years ago. Now, I need the idea that we spend our time analyzing now, just why is this like this? What is the problem? Who's to blame? Our culture conditions us to look for who to blame. It's one of those cultural conditionings we get that aren't good. There's a lot of cultural conditionings that we've accepted that we just kind of go along with. One of them is if we figure out who's to blame, that's it, we're cool. And I remember noticing this way back when I was still in college, I think, during the Iran-Contra debates. During all of that time is when you found out that crack cocaine was coming into the country from our government, and the only response that got any kind of notion, any kind of attention was, oh, we're going to have a Senate committee to study and figure out who's to blame. And there was money spent, and time spent, and hearings on television to figure out who's to blame. And once they figured out who to pin the blame on, nothing happened. Did anybody find any justice? Any health programs for people addicted to crack? Any kind of economic reciprocity for people whose lives were derailed and potential squashed because of drug dependency in their community and what it did as a legacy to people for generations? That makes me crazy. So, if you are in a setting where you find yourself doing a lot of analysis and trying to figure out who's to blame, try to check that for a minute, step back and breathe and say, wait a minute, what's the solution? That's it. How do we fix this? How do we do something different? And figure out what's the goal. If the goal is a healthy community, then let's talk about what a healthy community looks like. Let's start to identify what are the foundations and fundamental practices, and what does a healthy community look like? Start with that vision of a healthy community, and how do we collectively get there? Not spend all of your time figuring out all the ways the community's not healthy. For most people, that's apparent. And for people who lived with chronic conditions of oppression and injustice, reminding us of what doesn't work does not help us at all. It might alleviate where you might be as an individual because of your brilliant analysis, because you can figure it all out. Or it might make you feel a little less guilt if you have the privilege of not having to endure that particular oppression or that particular set of injustices. But it doesn't change the condition of the people who are suffering. As Pastor Doug said, if it's about suffering, let's not feed the suffering by having more suffering. Let's alleviate it by removing those conditions and changing the conditions, which doesn't take generations. We are brilliant people. We can change the conditions of a situation as quickly as we put our minds to it and say, okay, we're going to go in here and take over this building, and nobody is going to get foreclosed anymore. Nobody is going to join the military anymore. We shut down this ROTC station. There's all kinds of ways that you can change the conditions that are going on. But one of the pitfalls I find again and again is just too much analysis. Not that writing books is a bad thing. Maybe one of these days I'll do that too. But until then, I would encourage folks to try to generate solutions. And if you start feeling despair about conditions, and you're in tears because yet another young black or brown person is in the streets, take a deep breath, pray if you are a person who prays or meditates, and then really invite the vision of what justice looks like for that community, for those people, for that town, for that moment. And use that vision to fuel your action. And if anything that you might get in the way, to really push through the barriers, because we do have lots of barriers that come up, that try to rationalize, well, we can't take action now because it just won't work, or nobody will listen, or we won't win. You are the template of what winning looks like. Because for us at NURDC, and my role of being there for these last many years, is to create conditions where coalitions win. And you win if you look around the room and you see, oh, everybody's not the same color, everybody's not from the same class, everybody isn't the same gender, same age, same sexual identity, same religion. That is winning. Because that means when you go to elected officials, you are in a position to demand change, not request. Because if you request it, it's not going to happen. You can't ask them to do that. You take it. You must take it. You must create the conditions where they can't do anything but say yes. And you create those conditions by applying political pressure, by applying public pressure through social media and the regular media, by showing up, by marching, showing up at their offices, stopping their proceedings. Those demonstrate that you've got the pressure. And then when they look at you and say, oh, it's not just a bunch of old black women, then they know they can't say, oh, this is just a fringe group. These are just a bunch of hotheads who just don't know what they're doing. No, we've got professors, we've got Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Christians, Muslims, pagans, whatever. So that is the formula for winning, and y'all got that. I just looked around the room and I know you got that. You can have younger people, and most coalitions could have people who are 30 and under. Because, they haven't reached out to those folks, haven't included them, haven't created ways that they know they're welcome. And that's how you increase your numbers. You create space for people to know they're not just welcome, but they are included. They're included in a way that is meaningful to them. Not just making copies and cleaning up after stuff, but taking on roles that show they're developing leadership and using their own leadership. You don't have to be 50 to be a leader. You can be a leader at 15. And to recognize those leaders and support them is really important too. And in my experience with y'all here in Cleveland, y'all are doing all of the right steps. You do come together on a pretty regular basis as a coalition and see each other face to face and try to talk about issues. You pay attention to what's going on and really press and do some pressure to the city. But I don't know if you're getting back from the city what you want. So I do want to open it up now for discussion from y'all about what is it you want from the city and how do we get it? Because I think that y'all can get it. So I can take a stack or somebody can just jump in.